that I did not know about Malaysia until I got here was the rampant racism in this country. It seems that everywhere we go, racism is an issue. And the reality is, tonight in this room, we've got Chinese, we've got Indian, we've got Malaysian, we've got American. If we can rock together in this room tonight, then we can stand together as one outside on the streets of Malaysia.
You'd have to be a very small-minded person not to understand that we're not a color of skin. We are not straight or gay. We're not American or Malaysian. We're not flags. We're human beings. We're people. And we need to see each other in that way. And that has been the main message of Anti-Flag from the very beginning, because the goal of Anti-Flag is to unify people and to help people see their similarities so that people will come together to tackle the problems that we have in this world that are much bigger than the color of the skin.
Also, I think that as young people, we saw the stupidity of racism and sexism and nationalism, and because of that, we felt as though that punk rock was had a message of defiance and rebellion, and it stood up against those things that we thought were stupid. So those were the reasons that we think that activism and punk rock come together.
Well, it's very complicated why I voted for Barack Obama. In boiling it down, I voted for Barack Obama because the alternative was something very ugly and something that could lead the world down a road of devastation. If Barack Obama did not become president, there was a possibility that that line of devastation could continue. I knew that Barack Obama was not perfect, but I believe that Barack Obama was a step away from devastating the world through negative U.S. foreign policy, which ultimately was there to benefit multinational corporations. I'm not a fan of Barack Obama. I never was a fan of Barack Obama. He's a step in a direction that takes us away from something really harmful. But we've got a long way to go. But the idea that punk rock can't get involved in politics, I think, is very foolish, because if you don't control politicians, politicians will control you. If you are not aware of what's going on in the world will take you by the throat.
Well, the Occupy movement that's going on around
Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street.
The U.S. and the world is doing exactly that. It is the population rising up and saying they've had enough of corporate bailouts, and they think that things should be done differently. And that is an important thing. It is always good when people decide that they've had enough and they're willing to take to the streets to really make change. One of the interesting things that you learn when you start to look at history is that change never comes from the top down, it always comes from the bottom up. So if you think that there should be a change, you always have to do it from the grassroots.
And it's important to realize that that bottom-up change, it takes a lot of time. I mean, you know, they try to ignore you in the beginning. The powers that be want to blow you off and make people think that you don't matter so that no one will get behind you. And it takes time. You have to protest, you have to work. Then they try to suppress you. And that's the stage that we've moved in with the Occupy movement, where first they tried to ignore us, now they're trying to oppress us, because they can see that we're starting to put pressure on them. We're forcing them to make changes and to give up power that they don't want to give up. The next step will be that we will win. And that's what people have to realize. But for us to win, we have to keep the pressure on. We have to keep working. We'll have a lot of failures before we have victory. But the point is that if you keep fighting, you eventually win.
We talked to a lot of people who are working with the Occupy movement here in Malaysia, and they are doing the same thing. They're organizing and rallying together to bring change about in their own country. Protesting is never a pleasant thing. It is never easy. Power never gives up its power without a fight. And the only way to achieve that is through mass demonstration. So yeah, it's never an easy battle. It's always uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for the people who are in the streets. It's uncomfortable for the people who are losing power. But ultimately change needs to happen, and it will happen eventually, because enough people are frustrated with what's going on.
And when you stay with your message, that message slowly starts to get into people's heads. You know, when there's protests week after week after week, it may not appear right away that that message and that idea is getting through. But it does, but it takes some time. For example, in America, this concept of the 1% and the 99%, that was a concept that 6 months ago most Americans had never thought about. Most Americans didn't even know that the top 1% of earners in America own 90% of wealth in America. And that's a message a lot of Americans still don't have, but many more have it. It's a concept that many more people have than had it 6 months ago, and it's growing, and it's growing, but it takes time.
Well, when we were in the George Bush second inauguration, there was a lot of tear gas around. It's very unpleasant. We have not been arrested. No.
We actively work not to be arrested. It's
no fun to be arrested. It's no fun to be in handcuffs for 10 hours, 15
We're
hours.
very good at avoiding being arrested. That's something that we work at very hard. And but you know, for example, when Pat was talking about the George Bush inauguration, you realize that, you know, you're only as free as the powers that be allow you to be, unless you're willing to say, no, you can't silence us, no, you can't shut us up. At the George Bush inauguration, they didn't want people in the streets protesting George Bush. They didn't want us there to interrupt their ceremonies in their party. And they tried to keep us out, and they tried to keep us out with tear gas and pepper spray and fences and dogs and clubs. And people were willing to say, we're going to come anyway.
We have a new record called The General Strike. It'll be out March 20th in the States. I'm not sure when it'll be out in Malaysia, probably soon around there. But yeah, it's a great record. We recorded it ourselves in our studio, and it's pretty amazing. And we're working with Side One Dummy again, who did our last record. It'll rock your ass off. The interesting thing about the last year is there's been revolutions in many places around the world. There's the Middle Eastern revolutions that have gone on, and there's a lot of the Occupy movement. So there's a lot of things that have inspired us that are new. We would love to have seen a Tunisia revolution 10 years ago, but it didn't happen. But it happened in the last year. So those are the things that are really exciting for us to be talking about on the new record.
Yeah, and one of the things that we try to do on the new record is draw the parallels from the past to the present, and, you know, look at the people in the past who have inspired us, the labor activists who actually who invented workers' rights, something that people never had. You know, in the United States, people worked under really terrible and harsh conditions. Now in the present day, there are people who work under really terrible and harsh conditions, and it's our job to bring those human rights and to bring those labor rights to those people today, just like people did in the past. And if someone created and invented labor rights for people who were being exploited in the past, we can do it today.